Hello, welcome to the June 21st, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test and we will go ahead and get started soon. So bear with me just for a moment. Okay, so my monitoring computer sounds fine. So my name is Greg Undo. I am the host of the live stream today. I work as an employee of Yamaha Corporation of America, as is basically focusing on Steinberg products in the United States. I'm broadcasting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. Sorry about that. And I just wanted to, if you are watching the live stream live, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, it's always interesting to see. And how a live stream works, if you have not attended one before, is you can ask questions in the live chat field, or you could just simply send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could indicate which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Artist, Elements, Pro, what level, whether it's Cubase 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, or whether you are running a Mac or PC, that information is helpful. We should have an index of all the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top with timestamps. So if you needed to kind of look through the list of topics, you could jump immediately to that area. And if you wanted to find topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com. And Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website. Also, we want to give special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude they serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of do moderation out of the kindness of their hearts to make it a better community for people. So we want to give special thanks to them for their efforts in making it a better community. Also, one other wonderful resource of information that people should take advantage of, and it's really beneficial to the Steinberg community in addition to all the official Steinberg channels, is going to be the Cubase Nation Discord, and Jazz Dude does a lot of work with that. All right, so today is the summer solstice. Want to wish everyone a happy summer, and I think it's the longest day of the year, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first question. Hi, Greg. Could you help with a Project Logical Editor preset to delete groups with no sources using big templates, and would be useful when stemming to remove empty groups? Thank you. So I don't know of a way using the Project Logical Editor. I was kind of taking a look at this just like a minute or two ago. So if we go to the Project Logical Editor, we could have events that don't have, so I just created an event here that said, or a Project Logical Editor that would say media type is equal to group and the property is set to empty. So let's say if I just come here, so that's going to delete all the groups since there's no actual content that's on. But I don't know if there's a way to specify, if the group has no sources being sent to it. So I don't know of a way off the top of my head to do that in the Project Logical Editor. But, and it could be tricky because it's, if you have groups in a project, because unlike, like MIDI or audio or instrument parts where we have events that are on there, the groups are just kind of processing the particular audio. So I don't know a way to distinguish between a group that has tracks routed to it and groups that don't have tracks routed to it using the Project Logical Editor. So I could do some research, Alex, if you want to email me afterwards. So sorry about that. And I could maybe see if there's other solutions. All right, just going to pop out my chat. Okay, so we have Sir Robert checking in from Atlanta. We have Michael from the Big Apple. So we see question: can Dolby Atmos and Cubase be used for post-production work? If the files exported are .adm, will they need to be opened with the Dolby Atmos external renderer in order to export audio files? So once we have, so you could export the from, if you go to the ADM authoring for Dolby Atmos, we could export the ADM file there without having to use the external renderer. If you do need, Cubase will have a single bed, and Nuendo could have multiple beds. So if you needed to do multiple beds, which is often really handy and helpful for post-production work, then Nuendo might be a better solution for that, because you can have multiple beds, but you can have a single bed. And you don't need an external renderer when using Cubase, because it has its own built-in Atmos renderer. Okay, so we have a question. How can one route audio into an instrument track? Need to send audio to a vocoder and to Serum FX, but after Googling, I can't see an input source for instrument tracks. So, and this could depend. I think maybe I'm not sure if Serum is VST3. But if we wanted to have an input, so let's say if I go to an instrument track, how we could do this. If it's not VST3, then there might be some other kind of workaround, or you might have to, request for a particular update for that. But if we wanted to go into Retrolog here, one of the things that we could do to route audio into it is just to come over here and activate the sidechain. So we can now send a sidechain source directly into the instrument here. So that's often how it's kind of sidechained input. And if you have the full versions of Halion 6 or the full version of Groove Agent SE, you could sidechain audio directly to the instrument itself. But if it's only a VST2, maybe there's some other workaround that the plugin manufacturer has, but that's how it's kind of done. And, that was one of the big things with VST3 is kind of very creative sidechaining. So see if your Serum can do sidechaining, if it's VST3. And a lot of times we could do that kind of with vocoders. So often if it's kind of like a vocoder effect, you maybe something, I'll just do something similar. So let's say vocoders are often going to be kind of set up. Another approach would be I'll just add an insert effect on this particular track. So let's say I wanted to do like a loop mash. So we look at my, I'll add a MIDI track here. Okay, so we look at all my MIDI outputs, but now if I go to a plugin like Loop Mash FX, now if we go to a MIDI track, we could route, we'll see the Loop Mash FX show up as a port. So at this point, we could just say, okay, I want to now, so often this is how vocoders, so you could run the vocoder as an insert, take a MIDI track and route that MIDI information, like the carrier, I guess, into the plugin. And then that would control the different parameters for MIDI control of a plugin. So that's often kind of how it's done for vocoders. So see if if Serum has the capability of doing like sidechain inputs. All right, so we have Uno Memento from Finland, checking in from the land of the midnight sun. And he's where the sun does not set in Finland, north of the Arctic Circle on the solstice. All right, we have Trond from Norway. Thanks for joining us. Best Green Jesus from San Diego. All right, we have Benny from Sweden. All right, and we have Brian Grieve Music from Denmark. All right, we have Henrik from Sweden as well, and Myrtle Beach. Todd J from Myrtle Beach, thanks for joining. All right, we have DM from Portugal. All right, so we have Raheem just is happy to be on time for once. There's no tardy slips. So you don't get any. There's no consequences for being late other than you just have to hit the like button immediately. So. All right, so we see question. Is it possible to use the quantized panel on a group edit folder with audio and MIDI files? So I think it should be. So let's go ahead and let me come over here. I think. Okay, so I'll just add some MIDI data here quickly. Okay, so let's say if we put these all into our folder. Okay, so let's say if we wanted to now come over here, let's say if we want to do just some quick, I'll just do perhaps like I'm doing like a quick hit point determination here for my quantizing. And let's adjust our threshold here. Okay, so now we enable the group editing. Let's get to our quantized panel. All right, and let's go ahead and we'll create, let's say we'll just do slices to start off. Let's take a look, see if our MIDI. So it looks like the MIDI was moved as well. So it looks like we could do both the audio and MIDI simultaneously. So looks like you can. Okay. All right, so we have David M. checking in from Liverpool. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Can you tell me if you can send the metronome to an audio track or group effects, etc.? Basically, anything other than a control room cue output. So let's say if I, have these events here, and I just want to take, let's say, between my left and right locators. So one of the things that you could do is, like, if you have your left and right locator set and you go to project to signature track, you could say render audio click between left and right locators. And at this point, that's just created an audio file of the click track. So at that point, you could route it freely anywhere. So, just define your left and right locators. come over to your project menu to signature track, and then you could just have that automatically routed directly to an audio event and create an audio event on your project window, and that could be routed to anywhere you want. Okay, so we have Jim Burge, I think, checking in from England. Thanks for joining us. All right, Matt Elston is wishing everyone a lovely summer solstice, and we have kind of cloudy weather here in Washington, D.C. area. Okay, so we have a question. In Activation Manager, I only see Cubase 12 is activated, not Wavelab 11.1, even though I don't use the dongle. And is it possible to have, as in C12, 3 computers on a licensed PC Windows 10? So yeah, you have to do a migration from your e-licenser. If you want Wavelab 11.1 on the new licensing system, you have to do kind of a migration from the e-licenser. Basically, you're going to take the license on the e-licenser and turn it into a non-upgradable license. And then you'll be able to use it, Wavelab 11.1, once it's activated there. You'll be able to use it on 3 separate computers, just like the Cubase. So it's the same concept. And I did a tutorial video on this. I think it was posted today. All right, so we see Soren checking in from Sweden. Thanks for joining us. And we have Stefan from Sweden. All right, so we see, I just see a question. Does Greg go through the emailed questions first? I sent one in yesterday. So we usually kind of do it towards the end, just so that I can get some of the questions under control without losing some of the questions. So. All right, so we have Odavali checking in from Vienna. Thanks for joining us again. See, apparently it's Filter Freak is asking if anyone wants to buy some sun because there's plenty of it in the UK. All right, we see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. Thanks for joining. We have Razel from Denmark. All right, we have Jason Sykes from South Shields, England. All right, so we have a question from VTX Rudy. Says question, Cubase 12 artist. How do I exchange the VST instrument in a project rack zone without losing the MIDI notes? I recorded example violin to viola. Okay, so let's say if we have an instrument track here. I'll just go ahead and add 2 instrument tracks. So let's say we will do 2 retro logs. All right, so let's say if I have some parts on this retro log instance. All right, so what I would do, because if we remove the instrument track itself, so if I come here, we say remove selected tracks, that's going to make the data go away. So if I wanted to take this from, let's say, violin, and to viola. And what I would do is just simply add the instrument track so that it's there, and then you could copy. So, and at this point, we could just say, okay, I want to make a copy of this particular part to this track. And then you could remove that particular instrument track. Now, if it's MIDI tracks, you could remove the instrument from the instrument rack. If it was a particular, if it was a particular, instrument rack that MIDI tracks are routed to, or if it's if it's a MIDI track that's going to the instrument rack, not an instrument track, then you could just simply, decouple it and reassign in the MIDI output port here. But if you started with an instrument track, just add the second instrument, copy the part, and then remove the first instrument track. And then that will remove the instrument plus all of its data. So copy it before you do that. All right, so we have Guido checking in from La Plata, Argentina. Thanks for joining us. And we have Louis Che from Chicago. Thanks for joining us again. Chris Tazi from San Diego. All right, and we have Ethiopia on the live stream. So. Okay, so we see from Soren just says, can you show the sampler track in some way to modify sounds there? Okay, so maybe it's just like some sampler track tips. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to come here, I think I may even have a project that's set up. Let's see if it's still in my recent, yes. All right, so we'll open this. All right, so if you're looking to kind of just modify sounds, one of the things that you could do is let's say if we just have like just a one voice sound in Retrolog. So as we play. So even though this is an instrument track and I have a single note, what we can do is just say, okay, we're going to take this and we go to our sampler track. I'm just going to drag this particular MIDI note down, and we can say, okay, this pitch, like our root note, we could set, I think it's to G2. All right, so now as we play, I'm just playing the sample. And if I wanted to come over here and do, different filters, we could now at this point say, okay, I want to do maybe a classic filter. So we'll come over here now. Now, if we wanted to set these up for, different LFOs, you have the option to come over here. So let's say, okay, I want to go to my volume LFO. So we could just kind of come right over here. Let's go to our modulation. So we can say, okay, I want. So let's say. And let's say, if I want to do panning. And as we do this, if I want to change like the amount, then let's come back to, let's say LFO2. So we could come over here and adjust. Change the phase. And then if you wanted to, you could just kind of even come over here And then if you wanted to even come over here and just choose to audio warp so that we have kind of the same speed. But, you know, so that's just some of the things you could do. And there's like all sorts of creative things that you could do for, you know, if you wanted to take like different samples and let's say, you know, drag it in. So I had a friend who just kind of sang, I am singing this phrase for Greg. So where he just kind of sang one particular note. And if you wanted to come over here, we could put it into monophonic mode. And if I just hold the key down, I am singing this phrase for Greg so that he can get what he needs accomplished with this program. So I could just, as I hold a note down, I am singing this phrase for Greg so that he can get what he needs accomplished with this program. This is a recording. I am singing this phrase. So you could just kind of take even audio files and be able to, you know, replay the pitches in real time if you're in monophonic mode or if you want to do like 808 glide. So that's some of the stuff that you could do with the sampler track. But let me know if there's more stuff that you wanted to see. And thanks for joining us. Okay. So we have a question from the artist known as Love. So it says, using two Quantum 2626 Nuendo 12, best way to set up and use the ADAT for 4 ceiling monitors. Thank you. So if it's, I guess, 4 display monitors, you would probably want to, you know, come over here and let's say if you go to your audio connections, and at this point you could, yeah, and you may have, so whatever, you know, we would want to add an output bus. So if you're doing 4 I assume it's 4 monitor speakers as opposed to display monitors. You could maybe come over and create a 714 bus, and then you could connect whatever outputs that you have going that are connected to your ceiling speakers or to your monitor controller that's going to your ceiling speakers. So you could just at this point set the routing here from different outputs on your 2626 interface, whether it's analog or digital. If it's like an ADAT connection, you would need to have some way of converting the ADAT to an analog connection unless your monitor speakers has ADAT input. So I think maybe Alesis might have. There was one company that had kind of speakers with digital inputs. I think Roland, maybe, but most of them don't, you know, have ADAT outputs on the speaker. So you need to get something that converts the ADAT to an analog signal, and those analog signals and feed that to your 4 speakers on the ceiling. Okay. Okay, sorry, my chat field jumped on me. All right, so we see from Mad Dab GK, maybe because mine is free, Cubase doesn't pay, so the vocal editing is incomplete. So let me see if I could maybe see if there's a first part of the question that I missed. All right, so I don't see kind of the first part. So So if you have, like a free version, so there really isn't a free version. There's OEM versions like LE and AI that will allow you to, um, that will allow like vocal editing, but you get the very audio editing, which is kind of like the pitch correction in the graphic editor. You get that like when in Cubase Artist and Pro. So if it's kind of referring to being able to take, graphic pitch editing like this, then that is something that's only going to be in Artist or Pro. And I think Elements or AI may come with the a plugin that could be used. So an insert plugin. So let's say if I wanted to come here, some of the lesser versions may have, for if you go under pitch shift and go to the pitch correct plugin, and here you could just, choose your particular key and do kind of real-time pitch correction there. But for graphic pitch correction editing, that's going to be in Artist and Pro. All right, so just seeing a question from Jay from Connecticut. I'm wondering if VST System Link is compatible with Dante. I don't want to assume due to cost. So generally VST System Link, I haven't tried to connect it via Dante because it's not necessarily a digital audio connection. So it's a Ethernet connection. So as you kind of dive into that, I'm inclined to say that it wouldn't work, that you would need to use something, MADI, ADAT, Toslink, SPDIF, as opposed to that. So I'm inclined to say no. I haven't tried it. I don't have much Dante equipment personally. All right, so we see Gerald Ely from California. Thanks for joining us. And we have Mass Dab GK, just sending greetings to all Cubase lovers. So we have a question. Is there a way to record an outboard reverb only without the source that is feeding it? So it depends on how you have it connected. So let's say if we have an outboard reverb, I'll just jump to a different project here. I don't have one connected. So, if the outboard reverb is, connected, let's say if we have it connected via, just open up this project. So let's say if we go to our audio connection, so I'm not sure if the outboard reverb is connected via like an external effects integration. But I think that if we grab the, external effects here, and we have this as so let's say we have an effects channel and we are feeding our external effects. So we'll go to our external plugins and let's say, okay, we'll come over here to our reverb. And now when we hit track that, we could just come right over here when you do your export audio mixdown and you go to multiple, that now you could come over and you could just render the reverb. Obviously it would kind of have to play the track in real time, but I don't think that would include the actual source material. So try that and just do when you do the export audio mixdown, select multiple, and then you could just render the external reverb. I know that they render in real time, and I'm inclined to think that it would just render just the reverb signal without the source tracks. So let me know if you've tried that. Okay, so we see what is the quickest way to get multiple channels bounced down to audio? So the quickest way is probably just doing, like, let's say if I is just to do a render in place. So let's say if I'm here and I've cut, just make it short just so we don't have to wait. So let's say if I have all of these selected, like all of my drums, I could go to edit to render in place. We'll go to our render settings. And because we have multiple sources, we'll say, okay, I want to include my channel settings. We will see mix down to one audio file. And now that will just make a stereo WAV file of all of my drums. So once again, go to edit to render in place, to render settings. Try not to have dry selected, but do channel settings and then select mix down to one audio file. And that will just bounce it right down directly into your project window. So it's probably the fastest way. There's many other methods as well. All right, so we see a question from Mike Rivera. Is there a way to change the grid view when I do hi-hats and double click to edit the grid? Is everywhere it makes it hard to do triplets and other hi-hat grooves? Thanks. All right, so say if I'm doing, so you can change the grid directly here to, let's say, to your quantize value. So let's say, okay, I just want my grid, and we'll say use quantize, and my quantize value here, let's set it to eighth note triplets. So if I'm doing editing, I'll just take this off group edits. So let's say, if I had, I'll just make my bass part really big here so that as we do edits that, we could see our musical grid kind of just broken down into triplets. So as I would, let's say, move just a tiny little bit of data here. So let's say, so if I wanted to, so now we have the grid based on quantize. So as I'm moving it, we're getting 3 divisions per quarter note. So our eighth note triplets. And let's say if I wanted this to be quarter note triplets. So now as I move, we get 3 divisions per half note. And if we're doing this in the sample editor, like with, for warping, so once we're into free warping, you could come right over here. Let's go to our audio warp, and we activate this. So what you want to do in the sample editor, you'll see this show hide grid, and now we could move kind of the events, based upon the different grid resolutions that you want. You could have that automatically snap, but you'll see the grid change here. So we just say, okay, we're gonna, instead of using bar, we'll say use quantize, and now we could just move the components in the sample editor based upon the grid, but you may not see the grid until you actually kind of zoom in here. So if you don't click on this little icon, so you could change the grid, just make sure it's set to use quantize as opposed to bar and beat. And then you could do all your editing to triplets, quintuplets, septuplets, whatever you want it to do. All right, we see Randy Lee from Texas joining in, and Spike Williams is wishing everyone a happy solstice. Okay, so I see VTX Rudy just saying yes, contact and complete control. So let me just Okay, so it's about moving the MIDI notes. So I think we covered that earlier. And if you do learn something new, make sure you do hit the like button. And just a quick comment. So next week, I think, is the last live stream of the month. So we'll be doing a week from today, we'll be doing our normal end of month Zoom meetup. Okay, so you see question, I have a problem with Pro 11 with UR24C. The first event, either MIDI or audio, doesn't sound. All subsequent events are fine. This even affects the metronome. Is there a setting I can adjust? So I don't know if you're running Mac or PC, but I'm running a UR24C interface as well. So I'll just revert this project quickly. All right, so let's say if I'll turn the metronome on. So it's on. So you can see we can hear the metronome. So check, if you're going over here, so let's say you go to like your studio setup, go to your audio system. You could, see if your disk preload is set to 2 seconds, which it should be by default. You could see on the if you're on Windows, you could make sure that the use Steinberg power scheme is enabled. That's going to be a setting there. You probably want ASIO guard to be activated, but also if you select here and select the audio interface for the UR24C and go to control panel, see if you adjust the buffer size up, if that makes a difference as well. But I've used the interface on Mac and PC, repeatedly, and never have had issues with it not playing back like the first part. So could be maybe a buffering or something like that. Okay, so I just see question, how do I export single steps out of Groove Agent to audio? So I'm not sure. So let's say if we have, I'll just jump to a particular project. Sorry, wrong project. All right, so so when you say like single steps, so let's say if I go here and like I'm not sure if it's a beat agent kit or just a, let's fix a couple panning things here real quick. Okay. All right. Every time I open this project, my Groove Agent is panned weird. All right, so so if it's like a pattern, you could take a pattern out, and so this pattern is MIDI information that's now feeding the sounds, the MIDI sounds. So if we wanted to to do that beat by beat, you could just, if you wanted to, break it up by beat. Let me just set my snap back to, I'll set my grid to beat, And as we would cut here, you know, if you wanted to just, you know, render in place those particular things, we could come here and go to the render settings. I'll keep it as separate events. And now we could have everything kind of rendered just directly there. But if you could let me know, you know, I fear I may be going down the wrong path. But if you need every single beat, or if you need every different drum sound to be isolated, if it's something like you need every drum sound in this to be broken out. So let's say if I wanted to take, you know, this particular part, and I'll just grab these events here. And if these were going to separate outputs, like if we select the instrument and click on the instrument pad, we could route these to different outs. So I'll just play this a little bit. All right, so say, okay, route this to bus 5 and this to bus 6. So if it's something like this and you want to break it out, now that they're done with the project logical editing, we can go to our render settings. I'll just say channel settings, and we can now render, and each of the different elements will be brought in as, you know, independent tracks. So, but let me know if I'm misunderstanding. Okay, so I think it's further clarification on hello. How about when editing vocals using Cubase AI, can it be edited like using Melodyne? So if you needed to do more kind of graphical editing that's not available in Cubase AI, but that would be, you could upgrade to Cubase Artist or Cubase Pro, and that will give you that functionality, which is going to be way less expensive and a much better investment than buying a dedicated tuning tool. All right, so we see Nick is saying smash the like button. So that's good advice, I think. Okay, so I see from Odavali now 1-track snare, 1-track kick, etc. So yeah, break it out, Odavali, to independent outputs. And if it's a groove, like more of a acoustic agent kit, you would just select the outputs from the top here. You open up where you could just see like your instrument here, you could just do your routing, and then all you have to do is, you know, just do a render in place, set it to channel settings, and everything will automatically be split. All right, so we have Brian Sawyer checking in from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for joining. And Brian's question is, yes, Greg, can you show the multi-timbral of Hallian, please? Okay, so let's say I wanted to come, I think I have this in Hallian Sonic SE, and this would be kind of very similar to all the Hallians. So let's say I have my Fender Rhodes patch. And let's say, okay, I wanted to layer that with a real piano. So let's say more like an acoustic piano. So I'll just come here and let's go, or I wanted a different voice, you know, so I wanted maybe MIDI channel 1. I wanted it to be a Rhodes MIDI channel 2. I want it to be, you know, let's say a piano. So when I play a MIDI channel 1, we're going to have Rhodes. And now we'll have, and let's say on MIDI channel 3, I want it to have, let's say, strings. Okay. So now when I have the strings, all right, so right now I have this track going to MIDI channel 1. So let's say many of us may start a particular project with Hallian Sonic SE, and then maybe we want to add different sources so that I could do all my editing and see it all within kind of one instrument as opposed to opening up multiple instruments. So if I wanted to now create kind of a multi-timbral capability, but I start it with an instrument track, I could now right-click and we'll add 2 MIDI tracks. And so we'll add 2 MIDI tracks since we have 3 different voices added. And as we do this, it's now going to, I go to the next track that's going to take the same output routing here. And I go to the next track below, and it's automatically set the port and MIDI channel to increment. So that's how you could work in kind of a multi-timbral way. So if I wanted to have all 3. Now if I wanted to layer these all into one kind of nice pretty patch, I could go to the MIDI page here, and we could say, okay, I want these all to be on MIDI channel 1, I want my piano to be transposed down an octave. So at this point, when I play, we'll have our 3 voices. And if I want to make one louder, I could just, come right over here to mix. So that's a couple of different ways of working multi-timbrally, or or layering sounds. So you can kind of go back and forth pretty easily. So let me know if that helps, Brian. All right, so we have Pablo Gordy checking in from Chicago. Thanks for joining, being a part of the live stream. All right, we have Michael Teens joining us today. So Brian means virtual ice cream is going to start. What a great way to start off the first day of summer with virtual ice cream from Michael Teens. Thank you. Sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. All right. All right, so we see just a question. I've had a problem with my Steinberg library manager installation. Doesn't install any of the content. Wrong version. See, -1.-1 failed to establish privileged helper. So I'm not sure if you're running on Mac or Windows, but if you're running on Windows, make sure that one thing that you might want to try is just to try right clicking and see if you're running it as administrator. Generally I haven't heard of any issues with the library manager. So I just see it doesn't install any of the content. So generally the library manager doesn't install the content, but what you could do is to actually, where the content is downloaded to, try right clicking and starting, and then if you right click on the content, the .vst sound file, or the content that you have, for the instruments or loops, right click there and then open, and then you could choose open in Steinberg Library Manager. So generally you can move or find, different areas, but you generally don't install the content from the library manager. So. Okay. All right, so we have Kerwin Young joining us from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. He's teaching a hip-hop beat-making lab using Nuendo, so thanks for the support, Kerwin. Glad you can make it. Okay, reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. And again, if you have learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button, or you just want to support the channel and what we're doing with the live streams. All right, so we had a question. I see this directed to Jazz Dude, but do you have a tutorial that walks us through setting up more direct connections for the Q-Sends, like the Aviom system? Greg said something about it last week, but I can't find it. Okay, so, to do the Aviom system, so, generally if we're doing a lot of Q-Sends, we're sending various levels, from the Cubase mixer in varying degrees for a mix. And we're sending those various levels to, so that musicians can have different headphone mixes. Okay. Now, if you're using an Aviom system, that is designed to do all of the mixing for the levels, where it's just kind of sent out and each musician can set their own levels. So what I would do is just to come over, if I was using an Aviom system where I'm not changing the levels based upon the actual, from Cubase, but the headphone monitoring is for the musician. They have like the little knobs where they could adjust their Q mixes. So if we want to set that up in Cubase, I think the best way to do it is to just come over here. Let's go to, let's say, group tracks, and I'm going to add 8 groups. So let's say I have 16. I want to do, 8 stereo mixes. So I'll come over here. Let's add 8 stereo groups. Okay, so we'll just call this Aviom 1. I'll copy this tab, paste. All right, so we'll just label these. So the concept is that we don't need varying levels. We just need to get the signal there. And then the Aviom system will use the levels. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. Okay, so we have our 8 group channels. So once we're in, and we'll go to the full screen mix console, what I would do is on the rack section, come over here and enable direct monitoring. So we'll see in the racks, we'll see direct monitoring. And then we'll see this listed here, probably directly below the cues. I'm going to select all of my tracks here. And what I want to do now is we're going to go to this little triangle here, and we want to set it up for direct routing summing mode. I will go to my direct routing. I'm going to just turn on, I selected all the channels, and I'm going to enable Q-Link. So I'm going to say, let's send this to Aviom 1, and let's turn it on. So now the signal will get sent. And let's send this to Aviom 2, 3, 4, and you just kind of go all the way to 8. So now anytime that you want the different sources into your different mixes, you can come over here and say, okay, they don't want, the bass player doesn't want to, let's say Aviom 1, which is maybe the keyboard player doesn't want to hear the bass player because they're standing right next to each other in the studio. So you could now come over here and turn off the Aviom system, the routing of this track. So we're not using any of our existing sends. We're not using any of the inserts or our channel routing. We just have these 8 channel direct outputs. So once direct routing summing mode is on, if this isn't turned on, you're only going to be able to send it to one destination. But here we could send it to, 8 different stereo mixes or 5.1 mixes if you wanted to. And then this will get all of those signals out of the groups. And once we have those groups set up, something that's important that I should mention is we want these groups, we want to take these outputs, and these outputs we want to have, when we go to our audio connections for each of the groups, we need to set these to unique outputs. So for my Aviom outputs here, we need to send these to, we need to have these outputs defined so that we have somewhere for these to go. So now once these groups, we have the output from our converter here defined. So once that is defined, we route the groups to separate distinct outputs. Then once the outputs is configured, we can now come over and set up the direct routing. And now when we go to the mixer, each one of these sources, each one of these tracks is now going to each of your outputs to your Aviom system. So let me know if that makes sense, Michael. I think Michael Pierce also has an Aviom system. All right, we see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us. We see Brian Sawyer says, learning so much today, needs another like button. So maybe you go on a different account on a different computer or something. Maybe your wife's phone, you could just go on and give that extra like. So. All right, so we see a question. What is release driver when application is in background? Is that for Windows? So sometimes it can be available and applicable to all, to Mac or PC, but what that's going to allow you to do is sometimes, when we could use different drivers, so, it's more applicable on Windows. But you'll see when you go to the audio system, the release driver when application is in background. And what this will allow you to do is if you go to like a web browser and you're watching the live stream, that this will, Cubase will release the driver, the audio driver, when you want to listen to something on YouTube. And then when you go from YouTube back, then the driver will the audio driver will switch back and forth. So you could monitor from the same audio hardware in multiple programs and kind of bounce back and forth. Okay, reading through comments here. All right, so I just see what version of Groove Agent are you using? The latest 5.1.10 update. So yeah, that's the version I'm using when it came out a couple weeks ago. So let me just add my instrument. We'll go to Groove Agent. Yeah, so 5.10, 5.1.0.111. So that's the latest one, I believe. Okay. All right. So we see, is there a way to set the strum level on MIDI notes? So what I often do for kind of strumming is just to, let me just go back to this project here. All right. So let's say if I'm, all right. So say if we want to do kind of strumming, is kind of use this tool, the trim tool, and hold down the Alt or Option key, and then you could, very easily kind of set the strumming amount that you want. So if you want it to be tight, or so just holding down kind of the Alt. So depending on the angle that you use, you could set different strumming intervals. Okay, so we just see a question, how can I record a reversed reverb for my sample? Okay, so let's say I want to take, let's come over, I'll just do it on my Groove Agent. Okay, so let's say we're playing, so let's say I want to do a reverse reverb on my snare. So I'm going to route this to a different output. Okay, so I'll come over here. We'll see my snare output. And on this output, I will come over and let's just do, I'll just click on the channel settings. And I'll put a reverb. So I'm going to use the Reverence reverb. All right, and I have it on the wrong bus, so let me just get rid of that. So I'll just show it from the mixer. Okay, so I'll just come to this and let's go to the Reverence. And I'll just make this. So in Reverence, you could just come here and just reverse the reverb. So you could load in any kind of IR, but you could just now. So that's a pretty easy way to do it. And if you wanted to, you know, adjust kind of the start time, you could do that as well. So try just the reverse function. And now you just come here. So then you'll be able to just kind of take that particular sound. So anything that you want, just try running it on, you know, with the reverence and just taking that reverb and reversing it. All right, so we see in Memento is going to be for the solstice in Finland. They go to a cottage on the shore of Lake Saimaa and heats up the sauna, eats and drinks well. So sounds like a great thing. We often overlook it here in the U.S. All right, my chat field just jumped. All right, so I think I'm. Okay. All right, so I just see to work around the groove agent issue I've talked about, would Hallian be useful for drums? So you could definitely use Hallian for drums. You know, I think for a lot of workflows, it's going to be, you know, groove agent makes a lot of sense for drums. It's more immediate, but you could definitely use Hallian, you know, or Hallian Sonic for drums. But I'm not sure if you've had a chance to reach out to Dom about that particular kit. Yeah, it's not a Steinberg kit, so, but, you know, if you kind of search for Dom Segalis, he has a lot of Steinberg tutorials and lots of other tutorials, wonderful guy. So maybe he could give you some more insight with that. Okay, Michael Team says, whack the like button, keep Yoda Greg employed. So, yes, I need to get another 10 years. So my son's in college, so I'll hopefully go out with 40 years with Steinberg if everything goes well. All right, so we see Greg, question. Greg, how do I automate multiple tracks at once? For example, how can I move the volume automation lanes of multiple tracks down by 3 dB? Okay, so I'll just go to the bottom here. So let's say we have okay, so I'm going to okay, so I'll just do some quick automation here just on these blank tracks. So let me just Okay, so there's a number of ways of doing this. So let's say I'm going to put this in quick link, and let's say I have automation that I'm going to write for all of these. Okay, so one way is just kind of, if we have all these different lanes of automation, I could come here and we could just kind of type in particular values. So we could do that. Now, what we could do if we have the project logical editor, we could come over here and just say, so we'll go to the project logical editor setup. And this has some added things in version 12. So I could just say, I want to transform, and then we'll say media type is equal to automation. And what I want to do is just come over here and trim, and we'll decrement by value in dB. So let's say 2 dB. And now as I do this, my automation will automatically decrease. Now, if you don't want to have all of the tracks open when we do that, so let's say we come here and look at particular values, and there's a function, so, because you may not want to open up the automation for every single track. So we'll say media track is equal to automation, and then we're going to say property is set to parent object is selected. So if I have these particular tracks set, I can now just do the automation for all. I could affect the automation on the selected tracks without having to open the particular track. So as we do this, we'll see that they're all going to be at the same level here as we kind of look at the expanded auto. And you could just select a track and without even looking at the automation, increment or decrement by dB values. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so just see question from Chaser, but let me see if I see it earlier in time. I just see, can anyone help me with this, please? But I don't see the original question. Sorry about that. Let me. I'm just kind of reading through some of the. All right, just going through some comments. Maybe I missed some. Okay, so I just see later on says clicking on the audio and clicking L, it takes the cursor to the left of the audio. Is there a shortcut to take the cursor to the right of the audio? Okay, so let's move this out. Okay, so when we come here, let's say our cursor is here, and we hit L. All right, so I think if we go to, might be under transport. Here, I'll just look in key commands as well. So. Okay, so you could just come right over here and say locate selection end. So, and this would be under transport. So let's say if I want to do Alt Control Shift L. So I will just come here and let me just type in. So all you have to do is just go to locate selection end. Let me just see if I can. I'll just assign this to a key command. So say I'm here, I have that event selected, and then you could just go right there. So once again, go to your key commands, and then you go to locate selection end, and see if it's in here. Yeah, so if you come here, locate selection end, you could just do it from set project cursor position right there. So try that, Chaser. That's the name of my high school band. All right, so you see that Michael Teens has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of fresh West Texas cantaloupe ice cream. So that's very generous. Thank you, Michael. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so we just see a question. If I'm not too late, I have a question for Greg. As CC121 was discontinued, would you suggest to get a used one anyway, or do you think better waiting for something new? Any suggestions? Thank you. So I think the CC121 is just kind of like, I think that everyone that has one just loves it. So if you could find a used one, I would do that just because, to me, it's, I like it as a controller because I don't look at it. I have it set up on my desk. I'm right-handed, so I have my my mouse in my right hand, my keyboard, my computer keyboard directly in front of me, and my CC121 to my left. So it's literally kind of like my left hand where I don't look at it, and I could do all of my controls. I think it's really kind of purpose-built, and it was just kind of a victim of components shortages. So if you could find a used one, I would go for that. Okay, so I have a question. Is it possible to quickly hot swap a sample in the sampler? I know there's a way with Groove Agent. However, I was wondering if you could do it in the sampler track. Okay, so let's go to sampler track here. Okay, so I'll just activate my sampler control, drag this in, and it's really all you have to do. There's a little lock button here. So let's say, if I've set up filters and done all sorts of great stuff. We could choose to lock the different parameters. So let's say, okay, we have my filter set, let's say my pitch, or whatever. So I'm going to now just drag a different audio file in. And as we do this, we could lock the settings, but it's literally just kind of just drag and drop directly into the sampler, and you could just choose to, so if we say, okay, if I have that locked, I come here, I could take any particular instrument and, just drag it in. All the settings will be retained, or if I want the settings to be reset every time we drag something in, we could just choose to unlock. But all you had to do is literally drag and drop, and it will replace the sample for you. All right, so we see Carrie Studio says, I bought Cubase during your last live stream. I'm really impressed with MIDI capabilities and ability to handle large amounts of data / tracks at 32 samples with a, I guess it's the Yamaha MG12XU and Ryzen 7. So yeah, the 12XU is just a really great little mixer with that. So, but glad that you switched, and welcome to the Steinberg family. So it seems like you're already part of the Yamaha family with the MG12XU. So hope to see you on many more live streams. All right, so we see Michael Team's revelation today is the direct routing. Woohoo! With a lot of O's. All right. Okay, so we see Sable Winters here listening in the background while working. So I think it was maybe Sable's birthday yesterday or coming up. So everyone wished Sable a happy birthday. I saw it on Facebook. So, all right. So we see Michael Teams is indicating that Gareth is tied up today, but he's joining us in spirit from Spain. We'll miss Gareth's presence and his witty comments. All right, so we see Robbie Bowling from Dallas has just arrived. Seeing a lot of people really happy with their performance in Cubase. All right. Okay. Okay, so we see the wonderfully talented Steve McRae from Atlanta. He's played on so many great records. So glad he could join us. Used to work at Rhythm City back in the day. Okay, so we have a question. How does one undo all the very audio changes from a file? I want the tune notes to all return to the original position. All right, so let me just drag a quick file over. Okay, so let's say I've done very audio editing. All right, so now I've done all sorts of bad edits, and I want to go back right to where I was. So if we, within the Very Audio tab, I think if you go to choose functions, you could just say reset all changes for selection. And that would take you right back. So you could just come right over here. And then if you wanted to reanalyze the audio, at that point, it's just going to be there. But if I just say, okay, I move this, move that, and just from the little functions, you could say reset all changes or reset pitch changes for the selection. So if I wanted to select all of the segments, I could come here. So I could do it for one particular segment, or we could just reset for. So if I, went way too far and totally screwed this up, I could just select that note, and then we could just say reset pitch changes for just that particular note and not affect other notes. So look under the little functions submenu right here at the bottom. It's a little hidden. All right, so we see from Stephen Gray says question on FX modulator examples and more ways to use it, preferably a video to learn more about it. So I did do a whole video, like 10 minutes on FX modulator. It's on the Steinberg YouTube channel, so it might be in the Cubase 12 launch, or if you look like FX modulator, just kind of search for that, like walkthrough. But we'll give you kind of a quick run through of it here, Steve. Have this big project. I'll get loaded up with all Cubase 12 new stuff in it. So bear with me just for a second. Okay, so the FX modulator allows you to kind of do like more kind of like LFO type of effects. So I'll just put this into like a loop. So let's say I want it to come here. And I wanted to do something more interesting with this pad sound rhythmically. So let's say I just have a very simple idea, but I need more kind of activity, more interest in a particular sound. So what I could do, I'll just open up my FX modulator as an insert. All right, so we have 12 different effects that we could load up. So I'm going to start with volume. And we could load this into 6 different modules. So we could say, okay, this is one measure in time, or we could have, and we can see our time, this little dot going across. So we could go to 16 measures or a dotted 30-second note. But let's say I'll do this to one measure. And now what I want to do is, we could draw curves in. So this way it could just change volume. So if I want to just double click, add different points. And let's say I wanted to just kind of rotate that, or let's invert it. And if I really hate it, kind of, we could also create random curves as well. And be able to kind of invert. But there's also curve points that are kind of included. So if I wanted to turn off, or if I wanted to go, so let's say I wanted to turn off and on, but I want it to be maybe faster rhythmically, I could come here. And this would allow us to, and let's say if I want to smooth that, so I could also do kind of have this only in different frequency ranges where everything else will play back normally, but I only want that activity on the high frequencies or the low frequencies. So let's say, okay, we'll have this smooth, and let's say I want to add a different module, and let's do panning. So I could drop in, now I could just take my panning module. So we'll just click here. So let's say I want my panning to go over 2 measures. And let's add maybe a flanger. And let's say if I wanted to take like, my different areas here. So let's say I want to take the bongos. I could have this be different. I could have 6 different sidechain inputs. So I'm going to come over here. Let's say I want it's my sidechain input 3, and let's go to bongo. So I will just kind of throw in kind of a random curve here. And we want this to actually be sidechained from the trigger. So we're going to go to our sidechain, and we're going to say, instead of being internal, let's do sidechain 3. So we could now come over here and just kind of change the, and we'll set more sidechain input. So you could do all sorts of kind of very creative stuff like that. So you're just kind of taking it from something that was, you know, very simple, where we say, okay, so that will give you kind of an idea of some of the stuff that you could do with kind of the FX modulator. So you could have 6 different modules with different LFOs, create your own LFOs, use different ones, all kind of included right there. So, but yeah, check out, you know, there's kind of a whole walkthrough of it as well. All right. All right, so we see Madge Deepers checking in from the UK. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, so we see question, is there a way to delete all muted events in a project to help clean up a session, All right, so let's say, all right, so I'll just go ahead and create some muted events here. Okay, so I think we could probably do this from the project logical editor. So we'll say we'll say container type is equal to an event. Property is set to event is muted. And we're going to choose delete. So we'll just come right over here. And then all of your muted events are deleted. So once again, in the action, you want to choose delete. Container type is equal to events. Property is equal to property is set to event is muted. Then all muted events will be erased. So give that a try. There may even be a preset for that. We'll see if there's a preset. I'll go ahead and just save this as a preset. All right, so that's all you have to do. So give that a shot and let me know if that works. Okay. Okay, just reading through comments. Okay, so we have a question. If I chop up a lot of audios on the same channel and I leave spaces between the parts I want, is there a way to quickly put them all together, one next to the other? Okay, so so let's say if I wanted to move like this event directly to that event. So let's see if we could, I think we could do this with a macro. So let's see if we could create this. I think I started one in a live stream maybe last week. We'll see if we can get it going. So okay, so let's okay. All right, so what I want to do is, so while I have this, let's go to, so what we want to do is move okay, so, and this could depend on if your transport setting is set up to transport use and under transport, if you use video follows edit mode, that may affect this. But let's say if I okay, so I think what we want to do, if we have this selected, and let's say we start with this event selected, we arrow over, hit B, arrow to the right, move event to cursor. So let's see if we could get that going. So let's get to our key commands again. All right, so we want to navigate left. Let's select, add. And then we want to hit B. All right, so let's add. Okay, I'm just gonna. Okay, so if we have this selected and we hit then B, and then we want to go to the right. Okay, we'll add this, and then we'll say I'm just going to check that, make sure it's took. Okay, so let's say if we're here and we start with our event here, and let's run that particular macro again. Sorry, I have lots of macros. Okay, so let's add to that. So I'm just going to go to the next event. Okay, so let's say if we have this a couple of times, we'll see this macro. So I'm going to start on the second event and have kind of my cursor there. So let's go to macros. And once you have this kind of set up as a macro and you have a keyboard shortcut, you could just trigger that. So I'm going to do it in we'll just make sure this works. And then we could come over. So let's say we'll go to our macros. So you see that moved the playhead position over. So let's come now and do that again. All right, so we may have to add one more component in the macro. So let's select that and okay, so let's see if this will work for 2 iterations. So come here to macros. I just have an obscene amount of macros I've created. So it looks like that kind of works. So let me just try it again. I'm going to assign it to a key in the key on the MIDI remote. So let's come over to my Korg Nano control. So let's say I want this button, and we'll have this go to key commands to macros. All right, so we'll apply the mapping to that particular key. So once I start with this, then I could hit that key. And so it's overlapping a little bit, but you could kind of tweak that. So that's something that that you could play around with. So just try here and say, while this is selected, and then run that macro just like that. So give that a try. And again, this is the macro, and I could play around with it more and check it out. But if you wanted to get a macro to do that, it's going to be move events to the previous. So you can say navigate left, locate the previous event, navigate right, move to cursor, locate next event, and then navigate to the right to select the event, and that could kind of start the whole process over again. So give that a shot and let me know if that's helpful. Okay. See, Michael Teams is reminiscing of working with tape. So, all right. So we have a question. Is there any other platform other than Discord to discuss about Cubase? So there's obviously lots of, activity going on for the live streams, but, Steinberg.net/forums is, a very active forum there. So you don't have to use Discord for that. All right. Great to see Chris Hallam from Columbia, South Carolina. Glad you could join us today. All right, so we see at the Super Bowl, I guess, was it 56? Halftime show, a deaf rapper, Sean Forbes, performed. Has Steinberg/Yamaha management discussed adding accessibility options to Cubase and related products? So we do a lot with, for blind people and visually impaired people, like a longtime Cubase user is Stevie Wonder. So, that's why you have the ability to make your own keyboard shortcuts, because we were making custom keyboard key commands for Stevie Wonder. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on to make sure that, so we're in touch with, like visually impaired people. I'm not sure if there's much that's going on for deaf people, in using that. So I'm not sure what we could do, but, they do pay attention to a lot of those issues, because we do have a lot of high profile blind users as well. So. All right, so we see Sable Winters had their birthday on Sunday with Juneteenth and Father's Day. So we hope you had a wonderful day of celebration. All right, we see Magic Deeper saying the FX modulator is cool. It's a lot of fun. All right, Chatfield just jumped on me. Okay, so I just see my talkback function doesn't work in the control room. I'm using the Audient ID 14. Can you help me with that? So, it should work. So make sure that, if you have the talkback enabled here, it needs to be configured for the input on. So when you go, the input needs to be configured in the audio connections. So when you go to the control room, what you want to do is right click, and you can add a talkback, and you just need to configure what input your talkback microphone is connected to. Once you've done that, then you could just do, then your talkback should work. So make sure that you've enabled one of the inputs on your Audient ID 14 to function as the input for the microphone for the talkback. All right, so we have Camille checking in from the Czech Republic. Thanks for joining the live stream today. Appreciate having you here. See, great comment from Jazz Dude just saying Cubase, a DAW where 90% of its owners know less than 50% of its features. Standard comment is, I didn't know Cubase can do that, and I use it for 12 years. It keeps me employed, so I don't mind. All right, so we have a question. Hello over there from Italy. How can you copy arranger and chord tracks in order to use them in another project? All right, so if I wanted to, come here, let's say I go to the beginning of my project. Let's see, let's see if I have a chord track. Just search. Okay, so if I wanted to do chord tracks, I could come over here and say, let's import tracks from project. And this is another question that was I got. It might have been emailed into me today. So it's on importing chord tracks from a different project. So let's come and say I want to. I think I have one I created under Hangouts. So let's say chord track. I have a project with chord tracks in it. So I would go to the import tracks from project and I could select my chord track. And then that's automatically imported directly into this project. And let's see, I have a project. Let's see if we can do the same with the arranger track. I can see where the arranger track could be kind of maybe set to a particular project since it's kind of very project sensitive. But let's take a look and see if we can do an arranger track as well. Sorry, just find my. All right, so I think I have. All right, let's try it again. So I'll go import tracks from project. Let's see if the arranger track is. All right, so I don't think the arranger track is there because that might be just so project specific, but let me just come over and I'll open. I'm going to first add an arranger track. All right, so now we have an arranger track here. Let's go to another project. All right, and I'm not going to activate it. But let's say, okay, here I wanted to take my arranger events. And let's try copying. And pasting, so you could copy and paste from other ones, but often arranger tracks could be very, set up. So you could copy paste. Let's see if we could even just drag and drop. Sorry about that. So I'll jump to the other project here. So I'll just go to Window. Okay, so I have this project here. So let's see if I could even drag and drop from one project into another. So while you can't be imported, you could copy or drag and drop them in. So. Okay, so just see comments. Incredible how flexible Cubase is. All right. So wonderful to see David Reuter and Kristen Parisi from Nashville. Just giving thanks for the live streams. Great to see you guys on live streams. Hope to see you in person sometime. All right, we have John Shaman in as well. So thanks for joining. Okay, sorry, okay, so we have a question from Stevie Ria. Can I delete Cubase from a laptop I'm upgrading and transfer it to my new laptop? So if you, with version 12, you could deactivate it from your laptop, reinstall it using the license manager, and then just simply reinstall on your new machine. So, so you could, so the program could be on both computers. You could you have 3 licenses with Cubase 12. So with Cubase 12, you would just deactivate your laptop and then activate deactivate your old laptop and then activate your new laptop. If you have a USB-E licenser version of Cubase, like Cubase Artist or Cubase Pro, like from version 11 and earlier, where you have the USB-E licenser, you could just install and move the USB-E licenser over. If your version of Cubase is using a soft E licenser, you can request a new activation code. And this could be for a Cubase LE, AI, or Elements from 11 and earlier. If it's a soft E license, now you could just simply go to the Steinberg website and request a new soft E license. So the licensing is changed recently in the last few months to make this more easier and transparent. So that's why there's kind of different options, because we're kind of in a transition state. But yeah, you could do it quite easily. Okay, so we have a question. Can you please demo for me converting a chord to a MIDI? I checked some videos, but it shows some merging of removing layers I don't understand. All I'm looking for is converting to simple MIDI. All right, so let me jump back. I'll open up this project. Okay, so let's say we have, guitars. So if I just wanted to come here.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago. It was 7th grade.
So if I want to take this guitar part, I'm going to just drag this particular event here to the chord track. So And at this point, if I wanted to add an instrument track, I'll just set this to, I could take all of these particular chords. So I'll just shift and double click on the first one, and that will select all of them. And then I could drag it, drag them directly to an instrument track. Let me just, I'll just hide the keys. So let me just take this. And now we've turned those all into MIDI chords, just like that. So let me know if that's what you wanted to do to kind of make MIDI chords. So, you know, you could take your audio file or a MIDI file and do the chord detection of it. And then from that point, you could drag the chords to a particular instrument or MIDI track, and then you could turn that into MIDI data. All right, so we see Romka's just saying, write music in support of Ukraine. It's a good sentiment. All right, we have Dalbsky saying hi from Nuendo 12. User from Holland says, Nuendo 12 user here, problems? No problems. You know, Nuendo and Cubase, we answer Nuendo questions, Cubase questions, Wavelab questions. So everyone is welcome. Even if you don't have a Steinberg product, you're still welcome to the live stream. So no problem at all. I want to thank, doing some reporting of people that are just promoting nefarious things. All right. Okay, so we see a question from Sable Winters, how to convert single audio track to single MIDI track. So we could do this with, you know, like a monophonic source. So if I wanted to take this vocal here, I could come over to Very Audio and let's do my Very Audio editing. And then if we go to under functions, we could just choose extract MIDI. And then we could just have it, you know, do pitch bend data if we wanted to. So if you wanted to exactly match. So at this point, we could just say, we could put it to a new MIDI track. And at that point, so it's not going to do like a piano part that's playing chords, but now we could just come and we could see the melody converted to MIDI just like that. So for like, you know, a voice, like a saxophone, you know, trumpet, bass, you know, a monophonic thing that's not playing chords, then you could just simply very easily use Very Audio and then under the functions, choose extract MIDI. We want to thank Jazz Dude for his very fast moderation. Appreciate it. Jazz Dude and Agent K are great for that. All right. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions. So let's see if there's, we have a couple questions that were mailed in. We can get to those, and we'll see if any kind of sneak in. It seems like we got through a lot of questions quickly today. So I just see from Jazz Dude says, it's a pity we can't delete these spams from the chat. So I think they don't go on to the chat afterwards, that they are deleted there. I haven't looked, but I think that maybe if they're deleted here, they're only in the live chat, but not in the permanent chat for the live stream. All right, so I'm going to sneak over to some of the questions that were mailed in. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you've learned something new, make sure that you do hit the like button and that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. All right, so let me just jump over to my other web browser here. Okay, so you see question. Greg, I use color in tracks, events, and mixer. Go to project color setup, and define my most used set of 9 colors. I choose to select colors by name. This set is not global and has to be entered for each project. It would be helpful if I had the option to use a global set of colors for the system default, like having more than one workspaces to choose from. So if you do this, so we'll come over. So let's say I kind of played around with some of my colors here as well. So if we come, like as you do new projects, we can just go to your project menu. So once you have the colors set up the way you want, and we go to the project color setup. So if you come here, we can say presets. And then at this point, there's the options. So once you have everything kind of set up, at this point, so let's say I want to make, I have this set by name as well. So let's say, okay, we'll call this kick. So we'll call it bass. All right, so I'll come here, whatever, and I'll make this 4th one like really red. Okay, so if I like this and I go to my options, I could save color set as default. So now when I come over here and I do a new project, so going forward, and we want to add tracks. Let's say we'll add a number of tracks. I'll come to my color wheel that we could have all of the colors just set up there. So you could save it as a default, and then every project that you kind of start can automatically be carried over with those particular colors, with your 9 favorite colors with their names. So let me know if that works. This is from Ronnie. All right, so I will come over to set it back to my default state. And now we're back to our standard colors there. All right, so I just see, is it possible in Cubase to deactivate the MIDI connection with a physical device temporarily while Cubase is still running? I have several controllers. Most of them are configurable with a proprietary software, but the software does not connect to the device as long as it is connected to Cubase. So, most of the times Cubase is going to automatically, use whatever, operate whatever MIDI drivers, and I've been in touch via email with the person who sent the question in, but and they had a Korg Nano control, like a loop deck, which is kind of like a stream deck, as well as CC121, and I think some Akai controllers. So but generally, Cubase uses whatever controllers are being used by whatever MIDI ports or MIDI devices are installed by the operating system of the computer. So when you're kind of working with that, and then most operating systems, and most devices will allow you to do multi-client so that it could work. One area where sometimes people can get messed up is like if they hit buttons on their controller and it's, instead of the controller, it's playing like, an instrument sound. And that could be, to solve that, if you go to your devices menu, let's go to your MIDI devices here. So let's go to your MIDI port setup. So we go to your devices menu. It's so version 9 ago. But we go to your studio menu to studio setup. And then you'll see the MIDI port setup. So if it's that you notice that they're transmitting different parts, then you could just come over here and turn it off in all MIDI inputs. So I get this question a lot when it's like, oh, I hit play on my Mackie control device and it plays a note. It's driving me crazy. Why is that? And you just turn off in all MIDI inputs. But basically, Cubase sees whatever whatever function that you're working with, whatever MIDI device is connected to your operating system and is available, Cubase will have access to it, but you don't necessarily have to have Cubase, treat that kind of as a global thing with the MIDI port setup. All right, so we had a question from Sweden. Can you please give examples when to use ABS and SUS buttons in the Q-Link by themselves? All right, so let's say I have, just add a couple audio tracks here, and we go to our mix console. So we have, let's say, our mixer, and we want to see, so we have our Q-Link modes. So let's say at this point, I have like different channel volumes here. Okay, so if we have these in Quick Link, and we have Q-Link, and we can do this by turning on Alt and holding down Alt or Option plus Shift. And now I could proportionally move all of the faders. Now, while these are quick linked, if I hit the sus, this would be suspend. And now I could just move one of the faders. And then as we go to quick link again, I could just come right over there. Now, I could also just kind of do this. Like, let's say, okay, I need more gain here. I want to bring this down. If you hold down Alt or Option while in Q-Link, you could temporarily override the linking to, make a minor adjustment. So that's what the suspend channel linking does. So you could just kind of hold down the Alt or Option key, and that would kind of give you the same functionality. And as soon as you let go, then Quick Link is turned on. What ABS stands for is absolute mode. So let's say I want these all to be at the same exact volume. So now when we're in Q-Link and we have ABS turned on, I adjust one, and instead of all of the faders being proportionally moved as I adjust, they will all go to the value of the fader that I click on. So with absolute on, I move this, and now they all jump to the same exact value. So without absolute on, I could come here. So let's say I'll just write new values here. So now they're all linked proportionally with absolute. I say, okay, I want them all to be the same volume as this channel that I'm grabbing. So that's the difference between them. Okay, so we had a question. How can I change inputs on several tracks at once? For example, for a quick drum session on my old DAW, I would make them all about 8 or so tracks and cascade the inputs with Shift, Option, plus Command, and select the first input. Thanks in advance. Okay, so if we want to kind of cascade inputs, so let me come over here to my audio connections and I'll just, okay, so let's say we have some different inputs here. So what I could do is select all the channels, and if I want them all to the same value, we could come over here. So let's say I want to go to my routing and then hold down Alt. You hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, and now I could select these to, this particular, I want them all to be routed to no bus. And when I select any of the tracks, it's going to be routed to the same source. If I wanted these to automatically increment, okay, I want this to start with input 1, I'm going to just hold down the Shift key, and then with all the channels that are selected with Shift, just Shift without Alt or Option, just Shift by itself, and I set the input. At that point, we'll see input 1, if I did it correct, and then you can see input 2, 3, 4, so you could kind of ripple and cascade. So, okay, so we had a question, and it's from Chris Tozy. And I think he's on the live stream. Says, I'm running Cubase 1202 on an AMD Phenom 2X6 1090T processor, 3.2 gigahertz with 32 gigs of installed RAM. I recently upgraded my computer to an AMD Ryzen 5900 12-core processor, 3.7 gigahertz with 64 gigs of installed RAM. Generally, I was happy with the performance of my old processor, but it lacked the instruction sets to run some of the more advanced plugins apps. As I run Cubase 1203 now, I'm experiencing glitches during playback. The software is barely taxing the resources I have, but then these resources spikes appear when playback is disrupted. I'm not using any additional plugins. In fact, I turned off a few to try to smooth out the performance. I generally use a Steinberg UR22 Mark I USB audio interface to play back, but the glitches happen with any sound configuration I try. This is probably a more in-depth question than you can handle on air, but is there a way to optimize Cubase 12 for the new hardware configuration? Is there a tutorial can support help with this? So the one thing that it could be with any new system, you might have there's a utility to look for called DPC latency monitor, and there's probably lots of different information on the live stream or on the Cubase Nation Discord. And what this will do is a little utility, because basically what's probably happening is, as on your new system, as you're playing audio, it could be a Wi-Fi interface is just saying, hey, I'm looking for a network. And that could interrupt the audio performance. So what DPC latency mon will allow you to do, so if you just kind of look for that utility, is that will kind of point out what, you could basically turn off and on different things. And that could point out what is causing problems, what is creating an interrupt to your audio performance. Now, on your new system, if you go into one thing that's that a lot of people miss, if you go to your studio setup, and let's say you go to audio system, on Windows, you'll have kind of in this area, use Steinberg power scheme, use Steinberg audio power scheme. So make sure that is selected, because many times, especially with laptops and many processors, they want to be very low energy. So what they do is often kind of throttle the filter out the full performance capabilities of your particular CPU, so that it's using less energy And if it's on a laptop, that's a big criteria, is to have, we want to have, really long battery life. And how you have long battery life is by, making sure your CPU is not working as hard. So, check to make sure that you have the Steinberg power scheme turned on and activated in the studio setup under the audio system. So check those things. But I think if you do the DPC latency mon, that you may be able to find and isolate the component. And it could be just like, okay, when I run Cubase, I just want to turn off Wi-Fi or put it in airplane mode so that it doesn't immediately ping and interrupt my computer's real-time audio performance. Okay, so just see a question. Any updates on bringing back local undo in a key editor? Many composers would like to have this features back. So I think this is something that was in 9.5. I've mentioned it to the teams before. I haven't heard any more information on it. So, but I'll bring it to their attention again. Okay, and we covered the other questions. Let me just jump back. Thanks for all the great questions. Let's go ahead and jump back to our live chat. And I think I may have gotten an email. Let me just check real quick while I'm on my other computer monitoring. Bear with me just for a second. Okay, so this is about the MIDI ports. So we have some more information just came in, so it was very timely. So just saying that the Akai, MPK, MPD all come with dedicated editor software to modify any settings comfortably from your computer screen as opposed to set parameters on the hardware. So it says, when I launch the Korg Nano Control Studio and Nuendo is running, I launch the Korg Nano Control Editor. I always get the error message saying failed to open the MIDI port. So it, all right, then he sent some. All right, so check. So it's like with the Korg Nano Control, so in the Akai, so it could be that with Nuendo 12, that they're automatically being kind of detected. So you may find that you don't need to use, So I think there's like a little software utility from kind of looking at the screenshots here that will indicate, like how to define these particular controls. But, with Nuendo 12, you have the new MIDI remote system. So the Korg Nano control is kind of automatically detected for you. And many of the Akai controllers are kind of automatically detected so that they're configured directly in the software. So you may not need that particular software. I'm not sure if they were running concurrently before, but I know Steinberg worked closely with Korg and Akai on that, so that you just simply connect it and your Nano control and various Akai controllers will just automatically be populated so that you could easily define kind of all of the functionalities using the new MIDI remote. So it could be that it's already being utilized for the settings in the MIDI remote. So check there. So, all right, let's go back to our live chat. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, just finding my spot, reporting some spammers. All right. All right, so we just see, so it says, what would you use for classic hip hop drums, MPC 60 style? So, Groove Agent for that, definitely. There's lots of content that comes, directly from Steinberg for that. So let's say if you wanted to, let's say we'll go to Groove Agent SE here. And if you wanted to we could look at different, so you'll see kind of all of your different kits here. Some of these are sold separately, like Simon Phillips Jazz. But if you wanted to, come over here even to all agents and say, okay, I was looking for more kind of hip hop stuff. And I'll just make this a little louder so we could hear it more. Or, just kind of going through all these. So if you wanted to. So if you haven't explored all the. So just a couple examples here. So there's lots of other stuff besides like the free kit of the classic 80s kit. So check those out. All right, so you have to see a question. Do we have mixing, mastering, vocal recordings, and background in the same project? So you could do that very easily in Cubase. So we'll just, because of Sable's birthday, we'll play just Beatles and Stones just so you could hear it. And that would kind of give you a good sense. So you have kind of a full production with all your effects, all your instruments, just audio recordings for vocals and guitars, all the mixing, automation, all the master bus processing can all be done directly here. So you just want to...
into the night. I turn it up.
So you can do just about everything for any music production task in Cubase. All right, so just see, this is a follow-up question on chords to MIDI. I saw some, they do merge in loop and then click on the track and do remove overlaps. I did not get that part. Any insight And why do we or we don't need to do that? So what, remove overlaps can do is just come over here. So, let's just come over here. So let's say, if we have chords that are all right, so you see we could have like two different MIDI notes. So sometimes when you need to, like, let's say that these MIDI notes were edited together, and we see, I'll just make this like really big. So if I click on this note, we can see that like this note may overlap with other notes. So if we come in, let's say we draw another note on the same pitch and they were overlapping, then you could choose to, delete the events that are overlapping, but it should just be that you just kind of can drag it straight down from a chord, from a chord track straight down, and you shouldn't have, and that shouldn't generate any overlaps. All right, just reading through. We see Benny's wife's birthday was yesterday, so wish her a belated happy birthday from all of us at Club Cubase. Okay, just reading through more comments. See, Cubase Junkies like me is not a good keyboard player, so it's an FX modulator is great for that. All right, so we see Michael Teams has to take off, so we'll see you on Friday. All right, Michael Pierce has now joined us. Thanks for being on the live stream from London. All right, we see Kai Wen Franklin. I believe he's in Florida, if memory serves. And we see Jazz Dude posted the link for the DPC latency monitor. Thank you for that. just reading through comments. All right, we see Graham Witcher on the live stream from Royal Wooton Bassett. Thanks for joining. All right, so we have a question from Bill Vincent. Is it possible to send a MIDI CC message on startup and shutdown rather than putting it in timeline in a project? My mixer needs to flip a switch when I use it with Cubase, and I'd love to automate. One trick that you could do if you need to set kind of initial values for like a MIDI CC, and this is also helpful for lots of composers. So say I wanted to add an instrument track, and there's a MIDI plugin. So let's say we come here, so we go to our MIDI inserts, and it's going to be MIDI control. So you could say right now, every time I start up a project, I want MIDI CC1 to begin at a value of 100 or whatever MIDI CC message. We could set kind of its initial value without having to have any data. So that's on start. I'm not sure if there's like a thing on, if once you have it there, if you need it on exit, or if it's just like every time that you start a project, if you have that in your template that resets it. So you could try that, and that way you don't have to have anything on the timeline. And, once you have that set, you could literally just go to the visibility and hide that particular channel. But that will, as soon as you hit play, that will send that particular MIDI CC, right there before all the other data. So let me know if that works for you. All right, we look forward to seeing Michael Pierce's Ukraine Blue Hair on next Tuesday's Zoom meetup. That's dedication. So. All right, great to see JVI again. So hopefully the tech support will get your UR44 figured out for you. All right, so we have a question. Can we delete all inserts on a track or multiple tracks at once? All right, so let me just add a quick audio track. All right, so say we have a number of inserts there. So I think if you just, I always get there's. So we could bypass there, but if we hold down Alt or Option, you could reset just like that. So let's just. So just if you click here with the Alt or Option key, you could do that. And let's say if we want to do that for multiple tracks, I'll just duplicate this particular track. Just make it a little larger. So here you could. So some people I think will save like a preset with all of them, but let's see if we can. We have this in insert mode. So if I have it in quick link and, you know, I could just drag them away as well. So, but I think there's probably a way to do it in the mix console as well. But, you know, so you could just, if you just drag it to an empty spot, that will get rid of your inserts as well. Okay, so we have, all right, so we see Carrie Studios is from Canada, so thanks for joining us. So we see, why does Groove Agent SE mess up patterns on some slots? Reinstalling doesn't help. So if you have like a Groove Agent pattern, one of the things that you probably will want to do is let me just get this. So, and you have the patterns. So if you drag kind of the patterns over, so say you're in pattern mode, you have this thing, just switch this, just click on this little MIDI icon here, and that will actually create a different port for those. So sometimes the patterns can conflict, have notes that are also triggering notes that are, you know, triggering samples. So when you drag this over, just to when you're in pattern mode here, just go to the Omni just to the left of that, and then turn that on so it's illuminated and a bit yellowish in color, and that'll probably fix the problem for you. All right. So we see just from Kaiwen Franklin, maybe I missed this, but will the Cubase VSTs ever be able to run without the USB key? So currently, you know, it's Dorco. Cubase, obviously, Nuendo, Wavelab has just transitioned as well. So I think we may see some instruments starting to transition over. So maybe very, very soon, like look tomorrow and you might see an announcement. So, but not everything, it's a process. So, but it's, you know, so currently within, 5 months of the system being released, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the major titles have already transitioned. So it's kind of ahead of schedule with that. So just, look for an announcement tomorrow. You see Cubase Junkie telling people to check out the Density MIDI plugin. So. All right, just reading through comments. All right. So I see. Hi, Greg. I like to time nudge a specific frequency range from a complete song. Example 50 to 100 hertz plus 20 milliseconds. Any idea how to realize this? Okay, so let's come over. Okay, I'll just do it on like a 2-track. Yeah, there's just some plugins that. Let's see if we can do it with one of the delay plugins. Okay, let's do it on our project. Be a little easier. Less time to set up. All right, so I'm going to send everything to a premix bus here. So let's just say all right, so let's add a group channel to the selected channels. Okay, so now everything's going into group 2. All right, so let's say on this, maybe we'll go to frequency. And I'll send this bus to a bus. Or I'll just, okay, let's just see if we can get it going first here. So we could try. Okay, so let's go ahead and just solo. All right. Let me just try a different approach. So let's say 50 to 100. We'll just say 20 to 100. All right, so if I wanted to take those particular frequencies and now run it through so I'm not sure if you want the frequencies to be there also. So let's say I have these going, I'll just do a small section of it here. And let's export your audio mix down. So we'll say group 1, and we'll insert this back into our project and create an audio track. Okay, so let's say, so if I wanted to delay that by 20 milliseconds, I could even just come here. So now all those frequencies would be so we can send this to the group. I'll take the imager off. So now this track is that those frequencies are now 20 milliseconds late. So, and you may also be able to, if you have the full mix, be able to take spectral layers and, you know, take those particular frequencies, and you could run that selection through a VST plugin, but it's not like a real-time thing. But if you know, so I'm not sure if you needed it to be blended or not, but that, let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we see soon Spectral Layers 9 release, and again, some features is revealed in advance. I just mentioned it because I want Cubase features revealed in advance also for the future. So yeah, you know, there's different category managers. So like there's one, you know, there's like one team that does like Nuendo, Wavelab, Spectral Layers, another team that does Cubase, another team that does instruments. So but we'll see, you know, I just have to follow whatever the, you know, guidelines are for revealing stuff in advance. So but it can almost seem kind of like a tease. So okay, reading through comments. All right, so we see Greg question: does the Groove Agent SE function when replacing sounds in kits pre-listen and place only work with Beat Agent kits, or is it with acoustic kits also? So I think it's only going to be for the, you know, for the, you know, because it's only going to be for the Beat Agent kits, because the acoustic agent kits are more fixed and you can't really drag and drop samples in. So that's kind of like this particular drum set, because it's very tied into like the ambience. So when you know, because when you hit the snare, it's also triggering that same sample at that same velocity level in the overheads. as well as the room mics and kind of blending that. So, so just kind of dragging files in, that's going to be limited to a beat agent kit, whereas the acoustic agents are kind of fixed in that, you don't want to inadvertently mess up like the phase relationships, because if you have a different snare sample, that's bleeding through in, that you'll have like the kick, may bleed through in other channels like a real drum kit as well. So when you drop one sample in, it doesn't replicate all of the real recordings of real drum kit in a typical environment. So. Okay, reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. Here we see Uno Mementos has to stop because he has to work in the morning. Well, thanks for joining us and spending part of your evening, and happy solstice. All right. So you see, we can import tracks from question. We can import tracks from previous projects, but it doesn't import the routing, even if I use the same number of channels and the same interface. Any solution? Thank you. So the intention is just to kind of get the data over. If you wanted to like preserve settings, what you could do is, like, let's say, okay, I have this track. Let's say my snare is going to a group channel, and my snare is going to an effects channel. So let's say, okay, now we have this going to our Rev X. Okay. So now as we listen to this, so my snare is way too wet, I could come over here and we could do, if you wanted to preserve the routings, you can come over to export, and we'll say selected tracks. Right. Okay, and I will now come over here and import. So you export selected tracks, but you import a track archive. So let's come over here. And we'll select all. And this can preserve routing. So now as I play back. So you could use, the export selected tracks. And if you select like all of the tracks were the groups, the effects and VCAs, those would be included with that particular track archive. Okay, reading through comments. Just seeing comments about other companies implementing Cubase features and just changing the name and acting like they invented it. Sometimes we're like, oh, we didn't know they couldn't do that, So it's always interesting. So we see, hello, Greg. Is there any possibility to set up Mix Console 1 with routing and pre-filters view only, second with inserts, third with sends, and fourth with EQ? Make this as a global for all future projects. So if you save it as a template, you could start off that way and preserve that. Generally the mix console views are kind of stored with a template or with a particular project because, if you have different tracks, the mix console is going to be different. So if you have, all MIDI and no audio, you're going to have a different view if it's all external MIDI. So start off with a template, and then all of those settings will be preserved within your template. All right, so just see, thanks. I think it's important to tame the nudge this is going back to the delaying the low frequencies, to tame the nudge frequencies of the original track. Otherwise, you're doubling the nudge frequency. So, yeah, you could do that in kind of the same process and just kind of choose to filter. So, I haven't really had a need to take all the, from 50 to 100 and delay it 20 milliseconds, but. All right, so we see a question, Steve from Westward Ho, UK. Hi, Greg. I'm getting into music videos. I have Cubase 12. What kind of format can I use? So, there's kind of a whole, because there's going to be different, video files can be very different than, typical audio files that are pretty universally played. So if you come over, just Google video support in Cubase, Nuendo, Dorico, Wavelab. And you could see this Help Center article, and this will go through kind of all the different, what formats are supported, which containers, which codec. So this will give you an idea. So, and again, just video support, Nuendo, Cubase, Wavelab, and Dorico. And this will give you, the codec and a container type. So, Cubase will work with the most common ones, but if you get a video file that you don't, that isn't, opening, you could just use many different freeware conversion programs. So it's always kind of a moving target with video codecs. So. Okay, so we see question, is Adobe Premiere the go-to video editing software that most use with Nuendo 12? Some people don't like the subscription model of Adobe, amongst kind of other things. So some people, depending, like if you are doing a lot of video editing, I know a lot of people are doing great work in DaVinci Resolve, and there's, free version of that. But Adobe Premiere is obviously a very popular choice as well. So I don't do a lot of video editing. I do very rudimentary video editing for screen capture tutorials and ScreenFlow. And we see Jazz Dude mentioning, I think DaVinci Resolve is the new video editor. So it wins the price war, I think. Okay, so just see just clarification on the Groove Agent question. It says, but Groove Agent actually misses some patterns in some kits. leaving empty slots instead of them, and the displayed patterns are obviously played from the wrong kit. Thanks. So if there's any particular kit and pattern that you're finding that on, let me know. If you could share that, that would be helpful. And if you want to email it to me, you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Appreciate Jazz Dudes and Agent K's diligence with moderation. I guess we're have an active live stream, so we get targeted. So, all right. So we see a question: do actual Cubase projects ever become corrupt? If so, can they be repaired? So oftentimes, if a project it happens, it's pretty rare. But if a project does get corrupted, sometimes you could import the tracks from a particular project. That often helps. And sometimes if that doesn't help, and that does it like 95% of the times, sometimes if you send it to the support team in Hamburg, that they could actually get it figured out and probably get it fixed. But there is a automatic backup going on that you could set for. All right, so just see Dimitri sending the picture right now, so that's great. All right, so we see Jeff Zabelski from Chico, California. All right, let me see if I could find the email come in. All right, I haven't seen it hit my email yet. It kind of gets forwarded to my email account because I'm not technically a Steinberg employee. So, all right, let me see if it pops in. All right, so we have DJ Mustafa checking in, saying hi to everyone. Thanks for joining us. All right, we see Jeff Sabelski's late because someone needed an oboe read. All right. All right, so I think I'm at the end of the questions. We'll see if there's any more that kind of sneak in. I'll see if this email pops in. Okay, so I think it's maybe just come in, so we'll see if we can. Okay, so let's come over here. It's an ambient kit 1. So it looked like not all the patterns. So I guess the question would be like not all of the patterns are showing up for the ambient kit 1. So let's come over, and so we go to add our instrument track. We'll come over here to drums. Let's go to Groove Agent SE. We're going to load a kit with patterns. All right, just making sure the right kit. So it's Ambient Kit 01. Ambient Kit 1. Okay, so let's go to our patterns here. So it could be that this one may only have 4 patterns. All right, but I'll just go back and reread. So, you know, you can have up to 16 patterns, but it doesn't mean that every kit has 16 patterns. So let me just jump back to the questions, and I'll just kind of sneak back. All right, so I'm just seeing if I get. Be nice if there's a search function on the chat. Let's see if I can. Go back to the original question, or if maybe if you could type the original question in on the Groove agent. But let's see. Okay, so I just see the why does Groove Agent SE mess up patterns in some slots? Reinstalling doesn't help. So I think, you know, that this might just only have 4 patterns. So it doesn't seem like there's missing patterns, but it may not utilize all 16 pattern slots. But I'll just continue to read through. All right. Okay, so I just see, okay, so more information on this. Groove Agent actually misses some patterns in some kits, leaving empty slots instead of them, and the displayed patterns are obviously played from the wrong kit. So say if I come here, all right. So it seems like these patterns here are from this kit. So like if I wanted to just drag this over, and now as we listen to it, we could just play this. You can see all the different samples that are. So it seems like that's fine, but it may not every preset may not have all the different patterns. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we just see how do you do clip automation more advanced? All right, so, you know, I'm not sure if you needed more advanced clip automation. So let's say if I wanted to take, this particular track, so you can do clip automation here. So if you wanted to just say, okay, I wanted to just take, my clip automation like that. So you could do that. And if you wanted to put more points in, and this is kind of pre-gain, but if you want it, a lot of times people may use the traditional automation, and you could do this on a clip as well. So if you wanted to do, more on a traditional automation where you could do, different curves if you wanted to. So you could just, with the range tool, just kind of increase or decrease, and then you could tilt here. So that's going to be more kind of reserved for automation because it's going to be more precise to interpolate all the Bezier curves. So, but we'll see if there's any more comments on that. So, but this is really more, you think this is often used for more correction. You kind of get the same results. This will hit it before the signal, which is often not what you want to do if you're doing this style of automation, that you want the actual automation that's sample accurate. And one other thing is, once you have that particular automation event, if you go to edit and you say, automation follows events, which is the default mode, now that as soon as you move or make a copy, you can just come directly there. And at that point, the automation will follow the clip. See, JVI says, my daughter feels bad, but basically I'm not allowed to type anything in her laptop if she does not read it. She want me to explain that. Well, please say hi to your daughter for us, JVI. And that sounds like an okay parent rule to me. So we're glad that you could make the live stream. So. All right, we see from Super Reels, thanks for being on the live streams. Just wrote a nice comment just to say many thanks for your work. Greg watched all the videos but never comment. So as long as you hit the like button, I don't care. So, but thanks for being on the live stream, being a part of the community. All right, and look, Michael Pierce has to step away. So thanks for joining us, Michael. We know you have a busy schedule. See you on Friday. All right, so we have a question. What does a small vertical white strip mean in the channel right beside the channel number in the project window? So this little stream here could be like, if you see like this little stream, that could mean that like that particular, we often see like this little, I'm just going to so the white strip just to the right of the channel. If you have like a control surface, let me just switch my nano control here to mixer. All right, so let's say I'm here, and we can see that we have this little white strip. I'll just, so when I go to, and this indicates which channels are being controlled by the control surface. So often you will bank. So I have 8 faders, so I could bank, and I hit the bank button. I go to the next 8 channels. I go to the previous next channel. So that little white strip just indicates if there are channels that are being controlled by a control surface and which ones are currently selected. If you have more tracks than physical control surface faders. But let me know if I misunderstood. All right. All right, so Dimitri is thinking maybe that that kit was different in older versions of Cubase. So let me just see. I have a 10.5. I'll just open that up, and we'll open up that kit and see if it's different. Haven't opened this up in probably year and a half, 2 years. Okay, so let's add instrument track and go to Groove Agent SE. Do Ambient Kit 1. All right, let's get to patterns. So you can see that it has the same 5 patterns here. So it looks like it's the same in 10.5. I could go back more versions on my home, on my personal studio PC, but it looks like it's the same from 10.5 to 12 with that regard. Okay, so we see a question from Best Green Jesus. I know there's a way to lengthen the sample in the sampler. Is there a way to shorten it while keeping it on one-shot mode? Okay, so let's say I have... Okay, so let's get my sampler control here. Let's drop this in. Okay. So I think if we just... All right, so say we have it on one-shot mode. All right, so say we do that. All right, so let's just grab the end here. So now, so this way we could choose kind of different start and end positions right there. So now we can... So let me know if that helps with your question, Best Green Jesus. All right, so we have a question. I have some serious problems with spectral layers in Cubase 12 when looping one audio clip 4 times on an audio track. Select all 4 clips and open with Spectralayers 8 Pro. Then to start edit any later, only the last clip will be played on the audio track for any reason. Can you explain what happens when open looped clips with Spectralayers? Anything strange to me? All right, so let's say I want to take this particular and I'll just do a new project here. Okay, so I'm not sure if you're working at the track level, but let's say if I'm here, all right, I'll just throw 4 different files on. Okay, so I'm going to add Spectralayers on the track level. Okay. So when looping one audio clip 4 times on an audio track, select all 4 clips and open with Spectralayers, then start to edit any layer. Only the last clip will be played. So let's say now that I double click, so let's say we have this set to Spectralayers. It's my extension. So it doesn't want to cooperate today, but see, you know, instead of doing it at the clip level, see if you're doing it at the track level here. Let me just see if these are maybe protected quickly. Yeah, sorry, but see if you're not doing it by adding the events, but if you do it at the track level here, if that makes a difference for you. I think it will. I may have to reinstall my Spectralayers. All right, so we see how to create a shortcut, or what is a shortcut for looping a section. So if you have it set to loop here, so like, you know, you could just hit the letter P to set the left and right locators, and then just on the numeric keypad, if you hit this slash, that will just enable the loop. And I think if you have a selection here, you could play it and then hit Alt or Option plus P. So whatever you have selected, that will play. So just come here, hit Alt or Option plus P. Get to the next event, Alt or Option plus P. And then that will enable loop and loop the selection and play it just like that. All right, so we see Jeff Sabelski just saying you got an excellent cello recording using a Beta 87 and AKG C3000B. All right. The C3000 is still kind of a great underrated mic. So it was like the inexpensive condenser mic for many years. All right, so we have a question. Sorry for the correction, but how do you use the range tool to do jump automation when doing mute or bypass automation? Okay, so let's say I wanted to come to my automation here. So let's say, all right, so let's say, all right, so we have kind of our tools. So let's say maybe, yeah, it's just two values on or off. So let's say, let's see if I have 2 points or multiple points. So it might be more for dynamic points, but if you have a point, looks like you could select the existing point here, but maybe not do it for a specific range since it's only two values as opposed to varying degrees. So, but I could play around with that and see if I can get that to work a little cleaner. Okay, so a question. In pitch shift mode, there are so many algorithms, and there's also Very Audio. What algorithm to choose for which material for best results? So it's hard to, it could be every singer a different, every singer may have a different algorithm that works best. And it could be depending on the mic preamp, the microphone placement, just the timbre of the voice, the harmonics that are present in the voice. Is it a very muffled voice? Is it very bright and enunciated? All of those things can make a difference. So you just have to really kind of play around with it. Usually the defaults work very well. Once you get into getting into the more, once you get more into, some of the Very Audio, that's going to require the solo algorithm because that's what's used to determine the pitch and do the analysis of it. But many hit records and Grammy Award winning productions have been done with that. See, Best Green Jesus, I think is the question on the sample in and out points is so simple. So you have to make sure that you got your question asked and answered. All right, so we see, can you loop MIDI in the editor? So we'll show you how to do that. So all right, so we'll come over here to patterns. Might be slightly different, but I think if you come over here, you could enable, we may have to turn it on. the independent track loop. So now that we have this, okay, so let's say, all right, so let me just set this to, all right, so now when you come over here, so my project's gonna play on, and then I have my MIDI just doing an independent track loop. So give that a shot. All right, so we have Amir joining us. Thanks for joining, being a part of the live stream. Okay, so let me see if we go back to his spectral layers question here. Let me just, I'll just jump to a different project. And I'll revert this quickly. All right, so just going back to, let's say, the spectral layers question. Let's see if we get it on this one particular file. Let me just jump back. All right, so it's one file that's looped 4 times. Okay, select all 4 clips and open it with Spectral Layers Pro, then start to edit any layer. Only the last clip will be played on the audio track for any reason. Okay, so let's say, I'll just put this, let's see if we get the extension to launch. Yeah, some reason my extension isn't launching with spectral layers today. We tried just launching it from not at the track level. Yeah, I may have to look at that. Sorry. But you can see if I can get that going for the next live stream. Okay, just reading through comments. All right, you see 119 likes, so thank you for that. Appreciate it. I have to jump on an antitrust training for work right after this, so I had to end just a couple minutes early, but I think we're doing okay on time. All right, so we see Panos just saying, so yesterday I bought Cubase 12 and I already loved the MIDI remote thingy. So I guess it needs a better name. So it's not the MIDI remote thingy. So, but it's great. We're glad that you have your Cubase 12 and you're enjoying it. All right, so we see from Alessandro, it says, thank you, this channel is so helpful. It's amazing. It's great. That's why we do these. All right. You see Nick saying, nearly time for a new work Mac, Greg. So, yeah, I'm due. So I have my orders in for my new machine. So I'm getting an M1 MacBook Pro. So we'll see how it goes. All right. So we see maybe the spectral layers is my fault for not having the cursor. Let me just check again. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's the cursor that's causing that, but thanks for the suggestion, Jeff. All right. I'll probably just reinstall it. That would do the trick. So just see a question. Hi, Greg. Have you been releasing music in Dolby Atmos to music streaming services like Amazon, Tidal, or Apple Music? What are your thoughts? Do you like Dolby binaural or Apple binaural? So, I remember talking to an engineer who's won a couple of Grammys for surround and immersive work, and he really didn't like the Apple binaural. Just thought it was really bad. So I haven't done any projects personally with it. I've done like a lot of 5.1 stuff. I haven't released anything, but I've had to help my neighbor try to get his, get everything working in Atmos to what he thinks it should be, and it just isn't quite working that way yet. So I think it's very interesting. I think it's great technology that most people don't really have the ability to take advantage of in their listening environments yet, which is a shame. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to route the main audio output to one set of monitors and a control room to another? You could, but it would often be doubling the sound. So if we come here, you could say, okay, let's go to my audio connections. I want my outputs to go here. So let's say I wanted to go to my DAW direct, and then when I go to my control room, I have them going here. But it's really just kind of sometimes sending the same, you're kind of splitting the sound. So there's no real benefit to doing it other than, if you wanted to send it to two different monitors, you could. But you could just have two monitors in your control room and switch as well. All right, we see Mariachi 7 Simon says, I deserve a big chocolate cake for my job. So, and also in Jazz Dude as well. So that's very kind. I already got like some ice cream from Michael Teams, so I'm good, but thank you. It's very kind. All right, so you see a question from Sable. Greg, when importing MIDI 1 tracks, why does it open Howling and Sonic above the tracks? There's a preference, Sable. So if we come over here, it's just a lot of times MIDI files or standard MIDI files that play back through general MIDI mapping. But if you go to your preferences and under import MIDI file, you could change the destination. So it will open up an instrument that could play back standard MIDI files is the intention with Halion Sonic SE. But you could also just have it go straight to MIDI tracks or instrument tracks as well. And then you could assign the sounds as you see fit. All right, so we see, is there a way to monitor the CPU load in Cubase? So as we're kind of working, there's a difference between CPU load and like audio performance. So when you look at your audio performance, you could kind of see like, your disc, we could see the peak and, your real time versus ASIO guard. And it could be that you have one plugin that is killing one processor, so sometimes people will load up like a Multitimbral VST that isn't designed to work across multiple processing cores. So sometimes, people could load up like, oh, I'm going to load up 10 sounds in this one instrument, and that instrument is taxing one CPU core so much that the computer is almost crawling. So, it's a different, CPU performance doesn't equal, audio performance. So, some plugins will scale across cores and some don't. So it's your CPU performance isn't really indicative of what is going to be set up to play back audio and real-time mixing. See discussion of Mac versus PC. So yeah, I'm the odd one who uses Mac for work stuff and PC for my personal stuff. So. All right, all right, so we have Hans Erik Wildorf just checking in from Bergen, Norway. Thanks for joining the live stream. All right. So I think I'm at the end of the questions. I have to wrap up just a couple minutes early because I have to do an online training thing for work. But we'll see. So once again, so we'll wrap up and we'll be back on Friday at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. So the same time that we started today. Next Tuesday will be the last live stream of the month. So we'll go for 2 hours and then have like a 2 or 3 hours Zoom meetup. And I'll have the links maybe for Friday. And then after that, like July 1st and 5th, I'll be on a quick holiday vacation. So we won't do live streams because it's around the 4th of July holiday weekend. I'm going to be going out to visit some family, some of my in-laws. But we'll be followed up again on like July 8th. So I just want to give everyone a heads up with that, but we'll go ahead and wrap up the live stream. Thank you everyone for the wonderful questions. If you did learn something new, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back on Friday. Thank you so much.